Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously fascinating journey back into the 19th century to uncover exactly how the modern map of Europe was drawn. We're going to explore the rise of nationalism. It's a concept that actually started out as this beautiful utopian dream for a lot of people, but, well, it ultimately spiraled into a pretty devastating global nightmare. It's just an incredible story of revolution, strategy, and empire. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a truly striking visual. This is a print prepared by the French artist Frédéric Souriau back in 1848, and it's titled The Dream of Worldwide Democratic and Social Republics. What you're seeing right here, it perfectly represents the utopian, romantic birth of nationalism. Souriau visualized a world completely united in peace, made up of democratic nations marching together away from the shattered remains of absolute monarchies. It was this incredibly hopeful, idealistic vision of what the future could actually be.
But what exactly were all these people marching towards? Well, the nation-state. A nation-state is basically a country with well-defined, delineated boundaries resided by people with a similar shared history, culture, and ethnic character, having a government of its choice. Honestly, it's the whole reason we have modern borders and passports today. But this wasn't just about geography, right? It was deeply about identity. The core idea was that the people inside these borders wouldn't just be subjects blindly obeying a king. Instead, they were supposed to share a profound sense of unity, strength, and cooperation. This definition really grounds everything we're about to explore.
Chapter 1: The French Revolution and Napoleon.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it breaks down Napoleon's rule. But first, to see where this powerful nationalistic idea actually kicked off, we gotta wind the clock back to 1789. The French Revolution was literally the explosive moment when sovereignty transferred away from an absolute monarchy and went directly into the hands of the French citizens. Suddenly, the people were the nation. And then enter Napoleon Bonaparte. His rule was, well, full of deep contradictions. On the one hand, his positive reforms were totally revolutionary. He introduced the Civil Code of 1804, the famous Napoleonic Code, which simplified administration, completely abolished the feudal system, and freed the peasants. But on the flip side, to conquer the rest of Europe and expand his empire, he imposed some seriously oppressive actions. We're talking increased taxation, heavy censorship, and forcing ordinary people into conscription for the French armies. So he was a modernizer and an imperial conqueror simultaneously, and the people of Europe absolutely felt both sides of that sword.
Chapter 2: The Unification of Germany.
So, back in the mid-19th century, Germany as we know it didn't even exist. It was just this fragmented, kind of messy collection of various kingdoms ruled by monarchs. After some early democratic attempts by the educated middle class totally failed around 1848, a highly calculated strategic process to unite them was launched, led by Prussia. Step 1. Prussia takes outright leadership under its brilliant and frankly forceful chief minister, Otto von Bismarck. Next, completely bypassing democratic parliaments, Bismarck leverages the sheer might of the Prussian army and bureaucracy. Finally, spread out over a grueling 7-year period, Prussia fights 3 major wars, taking on the armies of Austria, Denmark, and France. Methodically, step by step, Bismarck successfully incorporated those small, fragmented kingdoms into one massive, powerful nation-state.
And this brilliantly illustrates how that abstract political idea actually became a concrete identity. Meet Germania, the heroic, armed allegory of the newly formed German nation. Essentially, think of her as their version of Uncle Sam. The physical unification culminated in 1871, when William I was crowned Emperor of Germany at the Palace of Versailles. Right off the bat, this new empire flexed its power by initiating sweeping, modernizing reforms across banking, currency, administration, and the justice system.
Chapter 3: The Unification of Italy.
Now, while Germany was busy forging its empire up in the north, Italy was facing its own massive hurdles down south. Much like Germany, Italy was completely politically fragmented, yet its people shared this deep, undeniable desire for a single national identity. Just look at how deeply divided the Italian peninsula was in the mid-19th century. The northern states were sitting right under the Austrian monarchy, central Italy was actually controlled by the Pope, and the southern states, well, they were under the Bourbon kings of Spain. Out of all these territories, only one single state, Sardinia-Piedmont, was ruled by an actual Italian monarch. So Italian revolutionaries weren't just fighting to unite a people, they were actively fighting major foreign empires just to stitch their country together.
The initial spark for Italian unity was actually ignited by secret societies, mostly mobilized by figures like Giuseppe Mazzini. But it took literal boots on the ground to make it a reality. Enter the famous revolutionary leader Giuseppe Garibaldi. In 1860, Garibaldi and his armed volunteers, who were famously known as the Red Shirts, marched right into southern Italy. Through sheer force of will and some serious military strategy, they drove out the Spanish rulers and unified the southern territories with Sardinia-Piedmont.
And this monumental effort resulted in complete success. By 1871, the complete unification of Italy is officially achieved, and King Victor Emmanuel II is proclaimed the King of a united Italy. What we see in both Germany and Italy is this really distinct shift in history. Those early romantic dreams of peaceful nationalism, they had evolved into a much more pragmatic, militaristic reality. These awkward teenage years of nationalism were basically forged in warfare, strategy, and sheer power to successfully draw the borders of the modern European map.
Chapter 4. The Balkan Crisis. Let's move on and see how this builds, because as we reach the final decades of the 19th century, that idealistic dream of nationalism starts to buckle into something much more aggressive: imperialism. Imperialism is basically the territorial control of a region or a country by another country by using military control. This was, sadly, the intolerant evolution of nationalism. Once these newly formed European nations solidified their own borders, they immediately became jealous and competitive. They stopped looking inward at unity and started looking outward, seeking to dominate others globally, and even right in their own backyards. This explosive tension reached an absolute boiling point in the Balkan region. As the old Ottoman Empire started disintegrating, Slavic nationalities broke away in this rapid, chaotic fracture. Just look at this list: Romania, Bulgaria, Macedonia, Croatia, Greece, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, and Montenegro. The entire region became a massive geopolitical powder keg. Every newly emerging state was incredibly jealous of the other, each hoping to grab more territory and to find their own independence entirely at the cost of their neighbors.
So the crucial point is this: the conflict in the Balkans didn't just exist in a vacuum. Powerful European nations, specifically England, France, Russia, and Germany, saw all this instability and aggressively competed for control over the region just to extend their own imperial power. This domino effect, where intense nationalistic pride collides with unchecked imperial greed, led directly to global devastation, ultimately sparking the First World War in 1914.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer, leaving us with a really profound question to consider. Did the dream of the nation-state ultimately unite people, or did it just draw new lines for them to fight over? Nationalism proved to be an incredibly powerful double-edged sword, for sure. It successfully overthrew absolute monarchs and gave regular people a shared, unified identity. But it also bred the dark intolerance and imperialism that dragged the entire world into war. It is a complex, fascinating legacy that literally still defines our political map to this very day. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring history.